Many people ask if they will get injured while doing jiu-jitsu. And I think this is one of the number one concerns before somebody decides to start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because the conception is it's a dangerous martial arts. While that can be true, especially from the outside, when you see people doing leg locks and you see people doing arm bars and chokes, these things are inherently dangerous. And they can be scary and intimidating when you observe from the outside. And especially when people are watching their first exposure to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it tends to be competition, online competition reels or UFC. And in these high-level competition, injury rates are much higher because people are competitive, so they don't want to tap. People are going 100% when they go for submissions. And some of these, and if not most of these people, are getting paid, so their risk tolerance is a lot higher. So I think somebody who first observes Jiu-Jitsu, they don't have the full picture of what Jiu-Jitsu is, so they can be a little more intimidated and their perceived risk factor is much higher. So I totally empathize and understand how people can be scared of this. That being said, there is no way to not get injured while doing jiu-jitsu. If you train enough, you will get some sort of injury. Just like any sport that you do, if you practice soccer or if you practice football or if you practice basketball, those sports, in my opinion, are much more dangerous than jiu-jitsu. I've pulled my hamstring playing basketball. I've hurt my knee playing softball. I've got a concussion playing soccer. So I feel like these sports that people feel are less dangerous for whatever reason, because they're not going for arm locks or chokes or foot locks or throwing their partner on the ground, they have a less perceived risk factor. So the only way to not getting injured doing any kind of sport is to not do any sport. Even some of the low risk sports like walking or, you know, going to the gym and on the treadmill, those even have a risk in it tied to them as well. So that being said, I feel like it's unfair with people that don't understand jiu-jitsu, so they need to be educated. So I hope this video helps some people to understand that there are common minor tweaks that happen in jiu-jitsu. Normally in the beginning, there's a lot of soreness in the hips or in the ribs. You know, when you have somebody on top of you and they're putting pressure, our core is not used to receiving so much weight, and we tend to not want to tap, so we tend to absorb all this weight, and we're flexing our abs and we're trying to twist and churn out of these positions. And I would say the ribs, kind of tweaking the muscles in your intercostals, is probably the most common injuries for beginners. That, you know, I would say strains in our joints like shoulders, hips, are also common, because in the beginning, people tend to go a little too hard when they lack some of the technique or they lack some of the guidance. They might overdo it. And I think those are some of the things that we should watch out for. So how can we preemptively go into jiu-jitsu knowing these things and to lower our risk factors? So one of the main things is knowing our limits. And in order for us to know our limits, we also need to talk to our instructor. So I think when you go to your instructor, you should have a conversation with the instructor of your dojo, your gym, or the prospective gym that you're thinking about going to, and saying, hey, I have these concerns about injury with the sport. What are some ways that we can work together so that I can lower my risk, okay? So one of the things that is really important is the structure of the class. So, you know, if you're just sparring for an hour straight, the chances of injury is going to go up. And this is something that more seasoned competitors can do, or more seasoned practitioners can do, because they understand the techniques more, or they understand their body better. So they're able to do more sparring with less risk injury. But somebody who's new, I think talking to the instructor and figuring out which class they should show up for. Should they show up for the open mat that people train for an hour or 2 hours? Probably not. They should probably be coming to a fundamentals class where there's a proper warm-ups, so people understand how to use their body correctly, and they can properly lubricate their joints and warm their body up. Then they do some techniques, or they're learning positions, they're learning the concepts, but also moving their body, also getting in shape, also understanding the concepts. So usually that in our fundamentals classes, or in most fundamentals classes, that can take up about the first half of the class. Warm-ups, structural techniques, either stagnant or consensual technique drilling. So that's going to risk, the injury risk going to go down just by going to the correct class. And then after that, you get into some positional sparring where you're sparring with some limitations, and at the end, maybe some open sparring where you open up more freedom when sparring, but you do less rounds like that, because that tends to be the most risk inherent, but that tends to be maybe the last 10, 15 minutes max. So knowing which class to go to is really, really important, and you must talk to your instructor, having that open conversation with your concerns and how you can work together to create a plan so that you can go into the class. Because, for example, if you come to the class and you already have some pre-existing injuries from the past, whether it's a torn rotator's cuff or a neck that you hurt in a car accident or a hip surgery, like, if we don't know these things as instructors, we can't help you to create a plan for the way that you're going to approach the class. Because although we teach a class that's structured for the masses or for the general class, everyone has their own individual tailored plan that you either work on your own and or you work it with your instructor to make sure that you get the best out of the group class and you can lower your injury risk. So, you know, another way that an instructor can help you with that is by making sure you're partnering with the correct partners during the class. So if somebody's brand new, you know, most instructors will either partner them with somebody else who's brand new with an assistant instructor supervision, so they can help guide them. Because if you put two brand new people but they're not being supervised, then they can injure themselves, because maybe they go for a position and they go for a submission too hard, but because they don't know what they're doing, and maybe the person doesn't understand how to tap or when to tap. So that's another important thing that I'll get into. But knowing who to partner with in the beginning, ask your instructor, like, who should I partner with? They're going to make sure you partner with somebody either much more experienced that will help you. So they'll partner you with like a purple belt or a blue belt, or somebody that's going to help you and that can answer your questions and make sure you're doing the techniques safely and doing them correctly. And then you also need to know how to tap. So when, you know, you're doing a submission or a position, you can tap at any point. And that's something that we need to learn so that we know how to keep ourselves safe. Because as an instructor, we try to do our best to make an environment that's as safe as possible. Partnering people with the correct people so that they're safe as possible. But also, as individual practitioners, we need to take our safety in our own hands by tapping early and not letting our ego get too much in the way where we don't want to tap. Because I see this a lot with kids or some young adults when they're just like drilling a technique. Not even sparring sometimes, but especially during sparring, they're in an arm bar and they want to hold it as long as they can because they want to see how far their body can go, or they get in a choke and they don't want to tap. Now, if you, for whatever reason that is, they want to act tough or they want to push their body as far as they can go, but this is not the World Championships. This is just an everyday drilling. We're practicing techniques. We're having fun. We're learning martial arts, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and you're going to put yourself at risk. So there's a saying in Jiu-Jitsu, tap early, tap often, and that is going to allow us to practice more safe, to take the safety in our own hands. And you don't have to always tap just for a submission. Like I was mentioning earlier in the video, that a common injury or common tweak is your ribs. When somebody puts a lot of pressure on you and you're trying to move out, but your core is flexed and your ribs aren't used to that. So the muscles in your ribs tend to get tweaked in the beginning. It's very common. So even if someone's putting a lot of pressure on you, you can just tap anytime and you'll start again. And then your partner might ask you like, hey, why'd you tap? I didn't put you in a submission. And then you can say, hey, there's a lot of pressure. I just was uncomfortable and wanted to stop. And they'll totally understand. And over time, you'll be able to take a little more pressure. You'll be able to endure more of that uncomfortable feeling. But you can't expect to come in your first day, your first week, your first month and be a high-level competitor and you know, mind over matter, David Goggins, every single positions. Like, it's not that serious. So knowing how to tap is important. You know, making sure you're coming to the right class, making sure you have the right partner, talking to your instructors, making sure that you come to the correct class, talking to your instructors, you have a game plan to help lower the risk of injury. Okay, and remember, basketball and soccer are much more dangerous than jiu-jitsu. And once again, we got to take it into our own hands as practitioners. You have to listen to your body. Like, you know your body more than I do as an instructor, and I can help you, I can give you ideas, I can give you techniques, I can give you my experience. But at the end of the day, it's your body. If your knee isn't feeling good, you know, maybe you should just do the technique portion of the class and sit out during the sparring. Or if you're too tired, take a rest round, because the more tired you get, then there's a chance of making more mistakes when you're doing the sparring portion and hurting yourself. So if you're too tired, just say, hey, I want to sit out this round. And if your instructor says, no, you cannot sit out this round, that might be a red flag, okay? Especially in the beginning, when you're a beginner, like, you know your body. If you want to take a rest, go ahead, watch, maybe drill some techniques while we're sparring, and come back in if you're feeling better. The only time that I'm going to push someone as an instructor to not sit out is when I know that person very, very well, when they're more of an advanced practitioner, maybe in a competition class where we are here, you know, to get in shape, to push ourselves past our limits, past our boundaries, to test our boundaries. I would not do that with a beginner or even with anybody in our fundamentals class, because the fundamentals class, I have a rule, at least at Daruma Dojo, you can roll, you can rest, or you can do reps. So the triple R's. Roll. When it's time to roll, you can roll. I'll help you partner up if you need. When it's time to rest, or if you don't want to roll, you can rest. You can sit out, you can watch. You can learn a lot by watching some higher belts roll. And you can do repetitions. So if you're sitting out and you don't want to roll because you're tired or for whatever reason, and you find a willing partner that wants to do some repetitions with you, you could partner with that person and do repetitions. So you're still moving, you're still practicing, but you just lower your risk of injury. Or you can catch your breath with some active recovery by moving, doing arm bars, doing sweeps, doing some back and forth techniques. So I think Jiu-Jitsu as a martial arts, as a self-defense, is one of the safest martial arts to practice, especially when done right. We have students that I've taught that are well in their 60s, and they come to practice on a regular basis, injury-free, because they come to the right classes, they partner with the right people, they know their body, they know their limits, they know when to tap, and they have open communication with all the instructors to make sure that we're working together to create the safest environment possible. At Daruma Dojo, we put safety first, we put having fun second, and we put learning techniques third, in that order. Hope this video has added some value. See you at our next Ask a Black Belt video.